With the recent trailer for Sonic X Shadow Generations, the whole Sonic community has been debating whether the Shadow portion looks good enough, or if it's gonna play well, but why spend time talking about the unreleased part of a game when most of it was released over 12 years ago? Sonic Generations was supposed to be Sonic's 20th anniversary masterpiece, and it got great reviews. But was it really the second coming of Sonic Christ, or is our nostalgia clouding our nostalgia? Well, let's check out this so-called masterpiece, starting with the story. What story? Sonic has a birthday party, his friends get sucked into portals, Sonic meets Sonic, Tails meets Tails, Eggman meets Eggman, we rescue our friends, and then we beat up the Eggman in an anticlimactic boss fight. Honestly, I don't even think they thought about the story until the night before. The story is so basic, I'm kind of impressed that this is actually real. I know Sonic games aren't well known for their deep and really intricate stories, but at least Sonic Adventure to Unleash stories had some real effort put into them. I know, I said back in my GT video that I'd rather have a basic story than a bad one, but at least the story in Forces seemed like a good idea that ended up half-baked. Like most of the 2010 Sonic games. Another issue that this story created was the timeline split, because this game made modern Sonic meet his past self, and both of them went through events of Sonic's past locations. Classic Sonic has full knowledge of a bunch of places he's going to in the future, which ends up creating two timelines. The first is the normal events that led to our modern Sonic that we had in Generations, and then the other is all of those same events that happened, but now Classic Sonic knows everything that's gonna happen and who he's gonna meet. Sure, you could just say he's there for nostalgia and, you know, nothing really matters in Sonic Generations, but every time I've played City Escape and Sonic Adventure 2 since then, I can't stop thinking that Sonic should know that the gun truck's been coming for years before it actually happened. Anyways, Sonic Generations got a lot of things right, which we'll discuss soon, but the story was definitely not one of those. But, speaking of things done right, one of the things Generations does way better than newer games is use Hedgehog Engine 1. I don't know anything about game development, but the original Hedgehog Engine is the best way to make a modern Sonic game. Everything about modern Sonic feels right. You can accelerate and decelerate, the boost lets you feel the true speed that Sonic can miss sometimes, and you can actually boost during a jump. Frontiers. My favorite mechanic in this game is the drift. As you'd expect, it helps you turn corners, but it feels so powerful, and I'm pretty sure it makes you go faster, especially because it won't slow you down against a wall. Not only does this feel great, it also looks amazing. We get the spin dash animation that modern Sonic lacks, and the way he quickly curls up makes it feel even faster, like a drop dash, and he hops every time you switch direction. A mechanic that wasn't handled well was the lightspeed dash. Instead of letting you use it on any set of rings, like in the adventure games, it can only be used on specific marked sets of rings. This makes it a pretty useless ability, because it doesn't appear too often, and by the time you realize you can light dash, it's too late. The perfect light dash should not have a charge up animation and should be able to be used anywhere, like Frontiers or Unleashed. Now, let's move on to the medium-sized elephant in the room, 2D. Your average Sonic fan will say that modern Sonic 2D is the worst part of those games and should be removed, but I'm pretty sure this comes from the excessive use of 2D in Frontiers and Forces. In Generations, the 2D is used pretty sparingly, and it actually controls, well, like Sonic. He takes some time to accelerate to his top running speed, and he decelerates pretty quickly. When the boost button is tapped, Sonic reaches his max speed immediately, and obviously, when it's held. One criticism on modern Sonic as a whole that I agree with is the massive lack of slope influence. Frontiers is the only game that really got this right, mainly with its spin dash. The only thing that makes the slope different than flat ground in Generations is the camera movement. Another mechanic that I typically like, but that kind of got underutilized here, is the air dash. An air dash is supposed to be Sonic's boost when he's out of his boost meter, but why is it so slow? It does move decently fast, but it should definitely take the current speed into account and keep some speed when you hit the ground. It feels like it just pushes you forward and then drops you. Okay, it's time to talk about the more important blue elephant in the room, Classic Sonic. Because there wasn't much of a Classic Sonic engine at the time, Sonic Team made an attempt to port his physics over into 2.5D. Emphasis on the attempt! Classic Sonic accelerates to his top speed way too fast, and this is probably when they realized how slow he is when he's not running. Classic Sonic feels like an icy tank, which makes precise platforming an absolute nightmare. especially near the end of the game, but we'll get into that soon. The Power Brick skill is supposed to help with this, but it doesn't actually do anything. Sonic Team did realize how slow he was, and instead of making him faster, or making his physics accurate, they made the spin dash do this. Yeah, just a bit overpowered, isn't it? I don't even know what to say. Sure, it might be fun at first, but really quickly, you realize how reliant you are on it to be fast at all, which just means a lot of stopping and no momentum. The spin dash is so fast that there is no idea what's coming up ahead, so I hope there isn't a bottomless pit nearby. And sometimes, the physics just don't work. In Chemical Plant, I tried to do a spin dash jump so I could escape the chemical water, but he wouldn't even jump at all, even though I heard the sound. Modern Sonic's lack of slope influence can be somewhat excused because there's a boost, but classic Sonic was literally built on momentum and using slopes, which he has almost none of. When he goes down a slope, no speed is gained, it's just a slow, painful roll to the bottom. But for some unexplainable reason, when he goes down a slope while running, he gains speed! Why? This is classic Sonic 101. Rolling plus slope equals fast. Maybe they just switched the names of two variables or something, but even Forces got this one right. Forces! The fact that there's a reason that I would prefer the physics of Forces Classic Sonic over Generations is just disappointing. The modern stages in Generations follow a similar path to Unleashed, as both are built on boosting and quick thinking, but Generations levels tend to be shorter and simpler. The amount of effort and time it takes to memorize a Generations level compared to an Unleashed level is a lot less. But this is actually a good change because it makes the levels more replayable and memorable, but it can sacrifice length in the process. Sonic Team definitely understood why people like the modern stages, and most of them are built upon speed-based alternate paths that require quick thinking to keep up. This allows for the fast boosting gameplay, but still requires the player to be skilled. Almost every modern level gets this balance right without such a large focus on platforming unless you're in the lower sections of the level. This game goes as fast as you let it. There is a sweet spot for everything that I think only one level hits perfectly. Crisis City. It starts out with a long stretch of 3D gameplay and lots of enemies to defeat, but instead of homing attacking them, lots of the chains can be boosted through. The platforming above the lava looks like it has lots of waiting, but if you know the cycles, you can see it right by them. A mostly unused mechanic that is really helpful and can be used here is the Stomp. A combo of stomping, boosting, and jumping can make any horizontal platforming section easy, which the level has a lot of. It's designed to always feel like you're progressing forwards. Since this is the first level of the modern era, it's kind of a difficulty spike, with lots of fire geysers that can make you take damage, but I kind of like this challenge that requires you to read the level and understand it by playing it. All of this combined with one of the best speed sections where you're dodging obstacles from the tornado makes this the best level in the game. Sadly, there is one level that didn't get this rewarding speed memo, Planet Wisp. There is only one good part of the level, and it's the 3D part at the start of it. It's actually really fun to speed through this section and learn all of the cool tricks it has, but once you get inside the factory, the fun's all over. The entire rest of the level is slow, 2D, vertical platforming. Do I need to say more? No! It's not fun, and it's bad modern Sonic level design. The classic stages are mostly designed around maintaining speed, with platforming being used when you can't. They definitely weren't designed with quick thinking in mind, because it is impossible to see what's coming up ahead when spin dashing. Some later stages definitely focus more on platforming, but to be fair, it was inspired by the classic games, and this exact same thing happens in Sonic 1, 2, and CD. These ones weren't poorly designed, but were obviously made with the spin dash as an afterthought. The best speed-based stages are Green Hill, Chemical Plant, and City Escape, while Seaside Hill, Crisis City, and Planet Wisp are platforming-based, with Speed Highway and Rooftop Run being somewhere in the middle. But Sky Sanctuary can jump into a bottomless pit because it's full of them. It is a platforming level, so spin dashing should be used less. But if you try to spin dash anywhere, a bottomless pit will suddenly appear and ruin your perfect run. The punishment for not knowing the level should be platforming, not death. For the third level in the game, to have so many bottomless pits at every possible turn makes it the worst classic level. This game has 7 bosses, 2 for Classic Sonic, 4 for Modern Sonic, and the final boss with both. Classic Sonic's rival fight is against Metal Sonic, and instead of being a race with Metal where you can hit him to slow him down, it's just a boring fight where he chases you and you wait to attack and then repeat. His main boss is the Death Egg Robot, which is a great fight aesthetically, but falls off a bit on the gameplay side. In Phase 1, it's hard to tell where and when to attack, but you have to wait for it to jump and then run under it to attack it from the back. It's not the best telegraphed for when it's gonna jump, but after one try, it just becomes a waiting game for when to spin dash. Phase 2 is where it gets interesting. It targets an arm attack on you from the background, and you have to activate these bombs so it blows itself up. I think this phase is actually really fun, but after one hit, the boss is over. There could have been more things to do with this phase, where you have to get rid of each arm, and then it does the off-screen attack from Sonic 2, and you have to make it land on the bomb, but it's only a dream. The Dreamcast era rival fight is against Shadow, from the end of Sonic Adventure 2. I have lots of trauma from Final Rush and Final Chase, but I actually do not remember this fight at all. After replaying it, I wish that I didn't. This is literally the Metal Sonic fight, but in 3D. With such little competition, does Generation stack up? Easily! Sonic and Shadow are racing to get 2 of these orbs that allow them to do a really epic, powered-up attack that plays their main theme. But the Shadow CPU actually has no skill, so the amount of time where Shadow is visible is rare. The course you go around actually has level design, where skill is required to move faster around it and take shortcuts. Sadly, there are no downsides to missing these, and there aren't any obstacles during the race. When Sonic gets the orbs, he unlocks this purple boost, and you have to hit these meteorites to slow Shadow down and knock him out. Yeah, just one hit and the fight is over. What's even worse is that the only chance you get to see Shadow's attack is when you do nothing and let him win. The Dreamcast era boss fight is against Perfect Chaos, and honestly, this is one of the best fights in the game. Just like the original, you have to run up to Chaos while avoiding some obstacles, but instead of maintaining your speed, you have to maintain the boost gauge. If you don't have enough boost, then you just fall in the water. There's a lot more obstacles that can be used to do tricks, get higher, or go faster, which makes it a bit less repetitive. That's only for the first 2 hits. On the third, the music changes and it's a bunch of jumping between platforms while Chaos tries to attack them. Nothing too interesting, but then we can hit him and win. Although this fight is good, I still have a few nits to pick. You don't have to be boosting into Chaos to hit him, which reduces the maintaining boost aspect when you just need to be able to press it once and get a hit off. In the original fight, if you attacked without enough speed, you wouldn't make it to his head. Another is that the second phase doesn't really get used much because it only lasts for one hit. I had an idea where Chaos could have attacked from behind, making it so you have to think quickly on which platform you have to go to without wasting time. But overall, this is still my favorite boss fight. The modern era rival fight is against Silver, and it's actually pretty good. He has multiple different types of attacks that require some thinking to hit him. During the fight, you run around a looping road in Crisis City with cars and other objects littered everywhere. Silver's main attack is raising those objects with his psychokinesis, and you can homing attack them to hit him. He has a few other attacks. He puts 3 boxes above your head and smashes them down, he creates a truck made out of cars, and you can hit him if you have enough boost, and he sends a bunch of psycho slices at you. After a mix of those attacks, he brings all of these objects together to make this giant meteor. While escaping from it, he'll keep attacking you, and you need to get close enough to hit him once and he's defeated. The main boss fight is against the Egg Dragoon from Unleashed. There are 3 phases to it. The first, where you're in a tunnel to catch up to it and hit it, using the ramps and rails to get ahead. The second, and most boring phase, where you're in 2D, dodging his ice attacks until he puts down these wall jump walls so you can hit him. I noticed that you can occasionally hit him during the dodging part, but only if you're close enough. The third phase has you free-falling, chasing after the Dragoon, but also dodging his fire missile attacks. The first phase is the most interesting because he has lots of different attacks he can do. From these homing fire missiles to the ice attacks, these lasers that cover the whole tunnel, and sometimes he uses the laser and the ice attacks at the same time. This fight also takes the most hits, requiring 8 hits to defeat. I don't really find the boss fun, but at the same time, I respect it for being pretty in-depth with its attack patterns. The final boss in this game is the Time Eater. You know, that void creature that's been chasing us around the whole game? In this fight, you play as Super Classic Sonic and Super Modern Sonic, dodging obstacles, collecting rings, and boosting until you hit the boss. A few extra things that you can do during this fight is switch between 2D and 3D. If you get extra bored, you can hold the jump button to send the other Sonic to destroy obstacles. I didn't learn about this mechanic until last year, because it's that useless. If you couldn't tell already, this is the worst boss fight, worst level, and just worst everything in this game. Nothing interesting happens and the story justification makes no sense. After Sonic Colors, Eggman just finds the time meter and that creates the story of this game. The only advice I can give to improve it is to just have good regular gameplay like an Unleashed final boss, and then have a Supersonic fight with okay gameplay, multiple phases, and maybe even time travel. I have no idea why that wasn't used here. The music in Generations follows a similar style to Unleashed, which have the day stages as fast, upbeat songs representing its gameplay, and the night stages being more relaxed and slower songs. Generations does a similar thing with modern and classic music, but instead of being different in pace, the main difference is the instruments and style. The classic songs feel like a direct remix of whatever the original song is. The main instruments used seem to be a better version of the Sonic 4 synth, some Genesis-style percussion, and occasionally Jun Sonoe slamming it on the guitar. Without a doubt, the best classic song is Speed Highway, because it differs the most from the setup I just laid out, having many effects placed on the song that definitely change it a lot from the original, especially on the drums and synth, which makes it my third favorite song overall. Instead of the modern songs being a faster version of the originals, it feels more like a remix of the classic songs, with a lot more originality in them. The variety and count of instruments has increased so much that it can be pretty much anything you can think of, from Speed Highway's guitars to Crisis City's violins and Rooftop Run's piano. Just like Unleashed, the songs also feel much faster and upbeat as you'd expect, but with some of them, it basically just becomes a whole new song. Chemical Plant has so many new parts that are different but fit in perfectly, which is why it's my second favorite across the whole game. My favorite song from this game is, of course, Crisis City, but for an entirely different reason. Crisis City is still upbeat and fast, which makes it more intense in the burning, destroyed city, but the best part is how it makes you feel multiple different emotions across the song, from upbeat and energetic at the start to calm for a while, until it becomes almost fear-inducing in the middle, then peaceful in the build-up, until it goes back to energetic and becomes sad after the final drop. This song is basically Silver's entire plot in Sonic 06, even with the immediate drop to feeling sad at the end, right after the most intense part, symbolizing Blaze sacrificing herself at the end of Silver's story. Honorable mentions go to Rooftop Run Act 2 and Planet Wisp Act 1, coming in as my 4th and 5th favorites. To answer the question, did we really like Sonic Generations? Yes, but that doesn't mean we liked all of it. One thing I've noticed in the Sonic community is that when there's a common opinion on a game, it tends to stick and rarely change. How often do you hear about the good in 06 and Forces, or the bad in the adventure games, or Mania? No game, especially a Sonic game, will be a perfect 10 or 0. Every good game has its flaws, and every bad game has its strengths. Although these are all just opinions, you should still make your own. To start with that, try to answer these questions. Name something good in 06, name something bad in Unleashed, and name something good in Colors. If there's one thing I want you to take away from this video, it's that Sonic Generations was great, but not perfect. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.